Welcome to Nancy Goodame, the Space Ranger. This is Chapter 11. Hi, that was a wise move heading for the Forest of Parables, noted Chuz the Jupitarian. None of the Sosniaks would ever dare to enter it. As far as I know, no Jupitarian has ever walked out of that place. Mind you, plenty have gone in, the idiots. The Sheriff, Martina Ruddlesplitch, Chuz the Jupitarian, Bart and Nancy had just walked from the centre of a square kilometre-sized grass clearing to a seemingly random point at the tree-lined edge. They left behind a shed, an empty immigration ledger, the lifeless body of a cantabular glimp, and a large Martian rocket resting on its tail fins. You're right, Chuz. It was a wise move. You see, everything I do is wise, noted the Sheriff. But I did not choose to go to the place you just said for any particular reason. I picked this direction at random. How is that wise? Asked Bart. Because we are at the opposite side of the planet to Sosman City, explained the Sheriff. Martina gave a loud cough and muttered the words, That's a stupid name. You were right, Martina. It is stupid, but the word Hobblograniker might confuse things at this stage in the story, so we'll have to stick to calling it Sosman City. Anyway, Mr. Bart, if you were any good of an astronaut, you would have realised that Jupiter is round, so it is wise to head in any direction to get to the other side. Such is the way of spheres. You would have realised that if you were not so caught up in your Earther style of thinking. Bart didn't respond, but threw a glance back to Nancy. Are you sure it's wise to enter a place that nobody has ever left? She asked. Nancy had taken Bart's backward glance as a prompt to question the route, which was sort of right. Bart had really just wanted a nod or an eye roll to confirm his suspicion that the Sheriff was a dope. That's not strictly true, replied Chuz the Jupitarian. That nobody has ever left part anyway. Because the wizard Oblong has been and left. He often goes to the Forest of Parables for his holidays. And that's the thing about wizards. They take holidays the whole time. Not like the job at Jupitarian Passport Control. I haven't had a holiday in 43 years. So 510 Earth years, noted Bart loudly. That's a bit harsh. It's not that bad. I haven't had to do any work in that time either. Well, until today, that is. And even then, it was only for a few moments. And it's all over now. Onwards and downwards. You mean onwards and upwards? From what I can see, we are surrounded by hills, said Bart. He was right. They were. Large rounded ones completely covered in forestry. Chuz the Jupitarian sidestepped from the line that consisted of the Sheriff Martina Ruddlesplitch, ESA Mission Specialist Bart McMurrow, and Mission Specialist Nancy Goodame McGinley, and strode to the front of the group, which placed him between them and the beginning of the trees. I meant onwards and downwards, because when it comes to the Forest of Proverbs, the best path is always down, or so I've been told. The Sheriff, Martina, Bart and Nancy all stopped in their tracks and waited for Chuz the Jupitarian to continue talking. When he didn't, the Sheriff said, How do you know anything about this place if nobody has ever gone there and came back to describe what they saw? Chuz gestured at the trees as if it was obvious. Because of the devil, or to be exact, because of the stories told about the devil. Was the devil on Jupiter too? Wondered Bart loudly. The Sheriff gave a loud, The devil has been all over outer space, explained Martina. So yes, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, probably even your place, Earth. But strangely enough, never Pluto, so they say. So they say is right, Martina, said the Sheriff. I wouldn't believe a word that comes out of a Plutonian's mouth, or whatever they call that fleshy orifice they lower food into. Don't worry, Bart, said Chuz the Jupitarian. The devil hasn't been here in a long time, over 14 million years. But anyway, when he was here, he went to the Forest of Parables. He took the form of an enormous serpent. He was slithering his way to Sosman City. You mean Hobblograniker, said Martina. No, I mean Sosman City. Hobblograniker was renamed Sosman City by Sosman Borkstapel. It's one of the first things he did when he came to power, answered Chuz the Jupitarian. I thought you'd have known that. I know Mars is a bit of a backwater, but the name change was big news at the time. Sosman even had a parade to celebrate the retitlement. Sounds like fun, muttered Martina. I know, it was a big bag of shite. Everyone had to stand around for hours while Sosman waffled on about how brilliant he was, with the Sosniaks bobbing their heads like nodding dogs as he spoke. Can you get back to talk about the devil? I heard the best weapons against him are the belt of truth and the breastplate of enlightenment. Though I've no idea what you're supposed to do with either. And anyways, all we've got is a crossbow, said Bart. 2 crossbows, interrupted the sheriff. Right, well, anyways, the devil isn't here. He's long gone. And before anyone asks, I've no idea where he went, said Chuz. But you said the devil was headed for Sosman City, said Nancy, before adding, sorry, Martina, Hobbler Graniker. That was long ago, and something called the gut chased him away before he got there. The point is, the slithering of an enormous devil serpent created a winding valley known as Pollineasp, or so the story goes. But if it's true, we could follow it through the forest of parables. Well, there's only one way to find out the truth of these stories, announced the sheriff. He loudly and exaggeratedly stepped around Chuz the Jupitarian and entered the forest. Chuz followed, and Chuz was followed by Martina, who was followed by Bart, who was followed by Nancy, who had a bolt in her crossbow and her eyes peeled for danger. She was strangely sure that something unpleasant was in the woods. When the group stepped under the tree canopy, they saw a dark woodland. The trees were close to many of the deciduous types found on Earth. Beams of daylight pierced the canopy to reveal abundant undergrowth. It was thick, but there were enough gaps for the sheriff to stumble through for several minutes. Chuz, Martina, Bart and Nancy followed silently until they heard the sound of water. That could be the valley of Pollineasp. Valleys have streams on Jupiter, whispered Chuz the Jupitarian. Whisht, whished the sheriff. There's something up ahead. The something the sheriff wished them for was an opening in the canopy, which revealed a rounded valley, about 30 metres wide and gently rolling down to about 4 metres from the edge of the trees. A stream was flowing through the middle of it, and 2 shallow shingle banks flanked it. The flow of the stream was to the group's right, and their eyes followed downstream. Although the valley made a gap in the tree cover, the canopies were joined at the edges by vines. Look at the state of your one, said Bart. Bart pointed Nancy to an elderly humanoid woman standing on the right bank of a gradual bend 50 metres further along from them. She looks like she's been buried in the Bog of Allen for 10 centuries, he added. He was right. The woman was exceptionally wrinkled and weathered. The fact that she was dressed in a grey/brown cloak and battered hobnailed boots did not help her image. That's got to be the ugliest yoke I've ever seen. Whisht, Bart, she'll hear you, whished Nancy. I doubt it, he replied. The woman had 3 large baskets of laundry and was attempting to hang their contents on one of the low-hanging vines that stretched over the water. For someone with a mean spirit, it was a hilarious scene. For someone with compassion, it was pitiful. The group watched silently as the woman lowered herself to a basket and attempted to grab an item of clothing. She then tried to raise herself up and swing the item over a vine, which meant she had to swing it slightly higher than her head. The problem was that her arms did not seem to be capable of going higher than her shoulders, which wasn't really high at all, and meant what she was at was pointless. We need to help her, said Nancy. It could be a trap, noted Chuz the Jupitarian. Remember, this is the forest of proverbs, and the proverbial washerwoman might well not be what she seems. But it's just an old woman struggling to put up washing. There is nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact, noted the sheriff, who then cupped his hands to his mouth and yelled, Are you a devil, demon, or witch? The woman turned to face the group and said, Hello, can one of ye help me put up this washing? No, yelled the sheriff. I am too important, and so is your fellow Jupitarian Chuz here, and so is this woman Martina. The sheriff gestured at Chuz and Martina as he spoke. Although, we could probably spare these 2 earthers to do the job. Stay where you are and I'll send them over. The woman nodded. The sheriff pointed at her and turned to Bart and Nancy. We're guests here on this planet, so the polite thing is for ye to hang up this lady's washing. Myself, Martina and Chuz will stay back here at a safe distance, in case she turns out to be a demon or something. Better safe than sorry. Nancy gripped her crossbow. Bart shrugged, and the pair walked the 20 or so metres along the Shingle River bend to where the woman was. A close inspection revealed her to be an even more ugly than they first thought. And rude. "There you go," she spat. "Get them all up quick. It's already mid-afternoon, so half the day's drying time has been and gone." The woman then took several steps backwards, squatted down in a very uncomfortable looking stance, and eyed Nancy suspiciously. Bart started into the task of lifting the clothes from the baskets and draping them on one of the vines. "There's something not right here," he said, without looking at Nancy. Nancy threw side-eye to where the old crone was squatting and replied, "There is. Just look at the size of these underpants. They're massive. Much bigger than that old duffer's arse," said Bart. "It's not that has me suspicious," said Nancy. "The fact that this woman is out here in the middle of nowhere, just as we set foot in the forest, is odd. Plus, she doesn't seem to be the slightest bit curious about who we are or where we're heading. It's like she was expecting us." "Well," said Bart, "that's all true. But the massive underpants should have you suspicious. Because they've just been washed, and there are still long, shitty skid marks down the middle of them." "The woman is old. She probably wasn't able to scrub that hard," said Nancy. Nancy had been fluctuating between harsh suspicion of and sympathy for the woman. Bart's criticism of the woman's scrubbing swung Nancy back to a note of compassion. "Don't you see, Nancy? Chuz said the wizard Oberon had the shits, and that the wizard often visits here. Chances are that woman is in cahoots with him, or at the very least washes his jocks." "We'd better warn the others," said Nancy. "You'll do no such thing," cackled the woman loudly. Bart and Nancy turned to see her whip out a battered slingshot from underneath her ragged cloak. "Ye two earthers now belong to me, and when the wizard Oberon gets back from his visit to the doctors, ye will belong to him. And when he is good and ready for a trip back to Sosman City, you'll become the property of Sosman Boxstapple." The woman grabbed a palm-sized rock, placed it in the slingshot, and aimed at Bart, which was a bad move on 2 counts. The first one being that the rock was far too big for the slingshot, and the second one being that it was Nancy the woman should have been worried about. Nancy released a bolt from her crossbow faster than the woman could fumble the rock into the slingshot. It sliced the top from the woman's left ear and buried itself into a tree behind the woman with a thunk. "That wasn't a miss," said Nancy. The woman stopped her fumbling and dropped the slingshot and rock to the ground. Bart turned in the direction of the sheriff, Martina, and Chuz the Jupitarian. They were being distracted by a loud but incoherent pontificative speech by the sheriff. "Hey lads, we got a prisoner and she's mates with the wizard Oberon," he yelled. "Good," yelled the sheriff back. "A wizened old hag at the bend of a river is worth 2 wizened old hags in the forest," he said. And the sheriff then strode over to the bend in the river where Nancy, her crossbow, Bart and a sneaky old woman were standing. The sheriff was quickly followed by Martina and Chuz the Jupitarian. And so it was for the late afternoon on the first day of the first human crewed interplanetary visit. 1 missing/kidnapped mission commander, 1 missing Martian orbiter with a crew of 3, 1 time-ravaged Jupitarian hag, a Martian sheriff, a Martian astronaut/waitress known as Martina Ruddlesplitch, European Space Agency mission specialist Bart McMurrow, and European Space Agency mission specialist Nancy Goodaim McGinley. Sorry, and 6 pairs of large half-scrubbed skid-marked underpants. And that's it from Jupiter for this week. Chapter 12 next week.